Good afternoon, everybody. This is Julie with Book of Hours. I hope everybody's doing good today on this Friday. I just want to make sure that I am streaming on all of the right platforms right now. So just give me a minute here. Let's see. I don't know why this isn't. I don't know why it's not streaming on Rumble. Your licensing options, Rumble only, personal, maybe this one. Sorry, guys. I thought I had set it up, but I don't know what's going on here. So I guess I'll just have to upload it later at a later time. But I am streaming on YouTube right now. I don't know, JP, if you're listening, do you want to come in and see what I did wrong on Rumble? I thought I had set it up properly. I clicked all the right boxes. I thought I had done this already, but what am I doing wrong here?
Nothing.
Okay.
Unable to set up live stream, please. Reload.
Okay.
I gotta reload that page. I was having trouble with Rumble earlier because it wasn't loading in. It was offline.
Okay.
So
yeah,
we'll just have to upload that later.
So it's not a me problem; it's a Rumble problem.
Guess so. Here, all you can do is you can
hit reload.
Yeah.
All right, I will upload it to Rumble later. Okay. Thanks for coming in and helping. Okay, guys. Thanks for that. Sorry about that. Hopefully you guys are doing good today. Let's see. We've been really busy. We have a friend who's in town, and we're traveling back and forth between Biloxi and Mobile, Alabama. We were there last night. We got home really late last night, and then we are going back on Mother's Day on Sunday for an outdoor event. So we're just really busy. So let me grab my pine needle tea right here. It's been raining too. So where did we leave off? First of all, let me show you the book. It's The Difference Engine. And actually, this is even better. Sure. Okay. Great. Can you guys see that? Okay. Last time I talked to you, I said I would talk to you a little bit about Cory Doctorow. Turns out I found out that because it says right here that he did the introduction for some of the copies of this book. Turns out that I guess he blocked me on Twitter a long time ago, and it's JP and I were talking about it back during like the early COVID situation. A lot of these sort of NPR types like Cory Doctorow were just doing a preemptive strike, and they were like blocking people just at random. Zuby actually did the same thing to me. These are people that I never interacted with. The only thing I could say is that I think Alison McDowell was talking a lot about Cory Doctorow and using his science fiction, his science fiction novels and his fiction as fact, or describing it as, something that we would probably be dealing with in the future. Here's the deal. We're still in sort of a 20th century, let's say 1980s, 1990s technology mindset. I know that a lot of people out there are like, no way, we're in the 21st century. We've got AI and all that. No, we are nowhere near things like central bank digital currency. We are nowhere near any of that. We're looking at a debt-based currency, or a debt-based economy. That's what we're looking at. But let me just really quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't pull it up on the computer, but I can look it up here on my phone. So Cory Doctorow is a Canadian-British blogger, journalist, and science fiction author who served as co-editor of the blog Boing Boing. Remember Boing Boing? He is an activist in favor of liberalizing copyright laws and a proponent of the Creative Commons organization. Creative Commons is something that anybody who is doing anything creative online should always post, the Creative Commons line that basically says, you don't have a right to use our creative work for personal, check with us first, whatever. So we try to put Creative Commons language at the bottom of our video essays or anything that we do that's creative. So I'm talking about Cory Doctorow right now. He is the proponent of the Creative Commons organization, using some of its licenses for his books. And some common themes of his work include digital rights management, file sharing, and post-scarcity economics. He's got some really strong opinions. Unfortunately, his strong opinions have led him to a place of maybe being taken seriously as fact. I don't necessarily agree with that. But he did write the introduction for this book that I'm reading from on these Friday readings. So we're still in the first iteration. So we left it with Sybil and Mick were attending a sort of a rally or a stump speech of Houston. So if you remember that, and he was very sort of bellicose and over the top, and it was kind of hard to believe that half the shit that he was saying was even true. The basically he was losing the audience. They were getting bored. So Sybil was used as a plant to sort of create a diversion. She said that she had a brother in the military that had died, and suddenly everybody got, more involved and more interested in the speech or in the performance. And there was some theatrics going on behind the man. So he's standing at the podium and he's doing his thing, and there's also some videos going on behind him, and not everything was going all that well. So, but at the end of it, when she faked fainting and all this stuff, and she finally left, she ran across a man by the name of Keats, who kind of knew he kind of had her number. And just as he was sort of like sizing her up and realizing that she wasn't who she claimed, a little boy ran past them, and apparently he had stolen everybody's hats and he had them under his coat. So, and that's kind of where we left it. So let's move on. Get a little more light. Here we go. I don't think I need my keyboard in front of me. That's kind of... All right. The installation of exhaust fans and the Daily Telegraph had wrought a perceptible improvement in the atmosphere of the Metropolitan, though Lord Babbage himself held that a truly modern underground railway would operate on pneumatic principles exclusively, involving no combustion whatever. Rather in the way mail was conveyed throughout Paris. Seated in a second-class carriage, breathing as shallowly as possible, Sybil knew it all for humbug, or in any case, the improvement part. For who knew what marvels the rads might bring forth. But hadn't the Rad's papers also published the testimony of medicals in the pay of the railroad that sulfurous fumes were therapeutic for asthma? And it wasn't only the fumes from the engines, but vile sewer seepings as well, and gassy leakings from collapsible India rubber bags that lit the carriage jets in their wire netted glass shades. It was a queer business, the underground, when you thought about it. Racketing along at such speeds through the darkness under London, where the navvies had come upon lead water pipes of the Romans and coins, mosaics, and archways, elephant's teeth, 1,000 years old. And the digging went on, this and every night. For she'd heard their great machine huffing as she'd stood by Mick on the Whitechapel pavement. They worked unceasingly, the excavators, boring newer, deeper lines now down below the tangle of sewers and gas pipes and bricked over rivers. The new lines were shored with steel, and soon Lord Babbage's smokeless trains would slide through them silent as eels, though she found the thought of it somehow unclean. The lamps flared all at once, the flow of gas disturbed by a particularly sharp jolt, the faces of the other passengers seeming to keep out at her, the sallow gent with something of the successful publican about him, the round-cheeked old Quaker cleric, the drunken dandy with his coat open, his canary waistcoat all dotted down the front with claret. There were no other women in the carriage. Farewell to you, sirs, she imagined herself crying. Farewell to your London, for she was apprenticed now, and an adventuress, sworn and true, bound for Paris, though the first leg of the voyage consisted necessarily of the twopenny trip back to Whitechapel. But the clergyman had noticed her, his contempt quite open there for anyone to see. It was really quite horribly cold making her way from the station to her room in Flower and Dean Street. She regretted her vanity for having chosen her fine new shawl rather than her mantelet. Her teeth were chattering. Sharp frost shone in pools of gaslight on the street's new macadam. The cobbles of London were vanishing month by month, paved over with black stuff that poured stinking hot from the maws of great wagons, for navvies to spread and smooth with rakes before the advance of the steamroller. Just talking about roads. A daring fellow ran past her, taking full advantage of the gritty new surface. Nearly recumbent within the creaking frame of four-wheeled velocipede, his shoes were strapped to whirling cranks and his breath puffed explosively into the cold. He was bareheaded and goggled in a thick striped jersey, a long knit scarf flapping about him as he sped away, and Sybil supposed him an inventor. London was rife with inventors, the poorer and madder of them congregating in the public squares to display their blueprints and models and harangue the strolling crowds. In a week's time, she'd encountered a wicked-looking device meant to crimp hair by electricity, a child's mechanical top that played Beethoven, and a scheme for electroplating the dead. Leaving the thoroughfare for the unimproved cobbles of Renton Passage, she made out the sign of the Heart and heard the jangle of a pianola. It was Mrs. Winterhalter who'd arranged for her to room above the Heart. The public house itself was a steady sort of place, admitting no women. It catered to junior clerks and shopmen, and offered as its raciest pleasure a pull at a coin-fed wagering machine. The rooms above were reached by way of steep, dark stairs that climbed below a sooty skylight to an alcove presenting a pair of identical doors. Mr. Cairns, the landlord, had rooms behind the door on the left. Sybil climbed the stairs, fumbled a penny box of lucifers from her muff, and struck one. Cairns had chained a bicycle to the iron railing overlooking the stairwell. The bright brass padlock gleamed in the flare of the match. She shook the lucifer out, hoping that Hetty hadn't double latched the door. Hetty hadn't, and Sybil's key turned smoothly in the lock. Toby was there to greet her, padding silently across the bare boards to twine himself around and about her ankles, purring like 60. Hetty had left an oil lamp turned down low on the deal table that stood in the hallway. It was smoking now, the wick in need of trimming. A foolish thing to have left it burning where Toby might have sent it crashing. But Sybil felt grateful not to have found the place in darkness. She took Toby up in her arms, and he smelled of herring. "Has Hetty fed you then, dear?" He yowled softly and batted at the ribbons of her bonnet. The pattern of the wallpaper danced as she lifted the lamp. The hallway had seen no sunlight in all the years the heart had stood, yet the printed flowers were gone, a shade like dust. Sybil's room had 2 windows, though they opened on a blank wall of grimed yellow brick. So near she could have touched it if someone hadn't driven nails into the casements. Still, on a bright day with the sun directly overhead, a bit of light did filter in, and Hetty's room, though larger, had only 1 window. If Hetty was here now, she must be alone and asleep, as no light was visible from the crack at the bottom of her closed door. It was good to have one's own room, one's privacy, however modest. Sybil put Toby down, though he protested, and carried the lamp to her own door, which stood slightly ajar. Inside, all was as she left it, though she saw that Hetty had left the latest number of the Illustrated London News on her pillow, with an engraving from Crimea on the front, a scene of a city all aflame. She set the lamp down on the cracked marble lid of the commode, Toby prowling around her ankles as though he expected to discover more herring, and considered what she should do. The ticking of the Fat Tim alarm clock, which she sometimes found unbearable, was reassuring now. At least it was running. And she imagined that the time it showed, 11:15, was correct. She gave the winder a few turns just for luck. Mick would come in for her at midnight, and there were decisions to be made, as he'd advised her to travel very light. She took a wick trimmer from the commode's drawer, raised the lamp's chimney, and scissored away the blackened bit. The light somehow improved. Somewhat. She threw on her mantelet against the cold, opened the lid of the japanned tin chest, and began to make an inventory of her better things. But after setting aside 2 changes of undergarments, it came to her that the less she took, the more Dandy Mick would have to buy for her in Paris. And if that wasn't thinking like a apprentice adventuress, she didn't know what was. Still, she did have some things she was especially fond of, and these went, along with the undergarments, into the brocade portmanteau with the split seam she'd meant to mend. There was a lovely bottle of rose-scented Portland water, half full, a green paste brooch from Mr. Kingsley, a set of hair brushes with imitation ebony backs, a miniature flower press with a souvenir view of Kensington Palace, and a patent German curling iron she'd nicked from the hairdressers. She added a bone-handled toothbrush and a tin of camphorated dentifrice. Now she took a tiny silver propelling pencil and settled herself on the edge of her bed to write a note to Hetty. The pencil was a gift from Mr. Chadwick, with the Metropolitan Railway Corporation engraved along its shaft. The plate was starting to flake away from the brass beneath. For paper, she found she had only the back of a handbill advertising instantaneous chocolate. "My dear Harriet," she began, "I am off to Paris." But then she paused, removed the pencil's cap, and used the rubber to erase those last 3 words. substituting "Run away with a gentleman. Do not be alarmed. I am well. You are welcome to any clothes I leave behind. And please do take care of dear Toby and give him herring. Yours sincerely, Sybil." It made her feel queer to write it, and when she looked down at Toby, she felt sad and false to leave him. Well, no one wants to leave their pets. With the thought with this thought came thoughts of Radley. She was struck by a sudden and utter conviction of his falsehood. "He will come," she whispered fiercely. She put the lamp and the folded note on the narrow mantel. On the mantel lay a flat tin, brightly lithographed, with the name of a Strand tobacconist. She knew that it contained Turkish cigarettes. One of Hetty's younger gentlemen, a medical student, had once urged her to take up the habit. Sybil generally avoided medical students. They prided themselves on studied beastliness. Sounds like the medical industry, right? Studied beastliness. But now, in the grip of a powerful nervous impulse, she opened the tin, drew out one of the crisp paper cylinders, and inhaled its fierce perfume. A Mr. Stanley, a barrister well known among the flash mob, had smoked cigarettes incessantly. Stanley, during his acquaintanceship with Sybil, had frequently remarked that a cigarette was the thing to steal a gambler's nerve. Fetching the lucifers, Sybil placed the cigarette between her lips as she'd seen Stanley do, struck a lucifer, and remembered to let the bulk of the sulfur burn away before applying the flame to the cigarette's tip. She drew hesitantly on the lit cigarette and was rewarded with an acrid portion of vile smoke that set her racking like a consumptive. Eyes watering, she nearly flung the thing away. She stood before the grate and forced herself to continue drawing periodically on the cigarette and flicking pale, delicate ash onto the coals with the same gesture that Stanley had used. It was barely tolerable, she decided. And where was the desired effect? She felt abruptly ill, her stomach churning with nausea. Her hands were cold as ice. Coughing explosively, she dropped the cigarette into the coals, where it burst into flame and was swiftly consumed. She became painfully aware of the ticking of the clock, and Big Ben began to sound midnight. Well, where was Mick? So she's basically saying goodbye to her home, her cat, her things, the comfort of her life. She woke in darkness, filled with a fear that she couldn't name. Then she remembered Mick. The lamp had gone out, the coals were dead, and scrambling to her feet, she fetched the box of lucifers, then felt her way into her room where the tinny ticking of the clock guided her to the commode. When she struck a match, the face of the clock seemed to swim in the sulfur glare. It was 1:30. So Mick was late. Had he come when she was sleeping, knocked, had no answer, and then gone away without her? No, not Mick. He'd have found a way in if he wanted her. Had he gulled her then? For the cakey girl she surely was, to trust his promises? A queer sort of calm swept over her, a cruel clarity. She remembered the departure date on the steamship ticket. He wouldn't sail from Dover till late tomorrow, and it seemed unlikely that he and General Houston would be departing London after an important lecture in the dead of night. She'd go to Grant's then and find Mick, confront him, and plead or threaten blackmail, exposure, or whatever proved necessary. What tin she had was in her muff. That's a little bit of money. There was a cab stand in Minories by Goodman's Yard. She would go there now and rouse a cabman to take her to Piccadilly. Toby cried once, piteously, as she closed the door behind her. She scraped her shin cruelly in the dark. on Cairns's chained bicycle. She was halfway down Minori's to Goodman's yard when she remembered her portmanteau, but there was no turning back. Grand's night doorman was heavy-set, cold-eyed, chin-whiskered, stiff in one leg, and very certainly wouldn't allow Sybil into his hotel, not if he could help it. She twigged him from a block away, climbing down from her cabriolet, a big gold-braided bugaboo, lurking on the hotel's marble steps under great dolphin-wreathed lamps. She knew her doormen well enough. They played a major role in her life. It was one thing to enter Grand's on Dandy Mick's arm by daylight, but to walk in boldly from the midnight streets as an unescorted woman was another matter. Only whores did that, and the doorman would not let whores in. But she might think of a likely story to gull him, perhaps, if she thought of a very good lie, and if he were stupid or careless or weary. Or she might try to bribe him, though she had little enough tin left after the cab. And she was dressed proper, not in the flash clothes of a dolly mop. She might, at a pinch, distract him, smash a window with a cobblestone, and run past him when he came to look. It was hard to run in a crinoline, but he was lame and slow. Or find a street boy to throw a stone for her. Sybil stood in darkness by the wooden hoardings of a construction site. Broadside posters loomed over her, bigger than bed sheets, with great tattered shouting print. Daily News, worldwide circulation, Lloyd's News, only 1 penny, Southeastern Railway, Ramsgate and Margate, 7-6. Sybil pulled one hand from her muff and gnawed feverishly at her fingernail, which smelled of Turkish tobacco. She was dully surprised to notice that her hand was blue-white with the cold and trembling badly. Pure luck, it seemed, rescued her then, or the nod of a sorrowing angel, for a shining gurney brougham came to a chugging halt in front of Grand's, its blue-colored fireman jumping down to lower the hinged step. Out came a rollicking mob of drunken Frenchmen in scarlet-lined capes with brocade waistcoats and tasseled evening canes, and 2 of them had women with them. Sybil grabbed up her skirt on the instant and scurried forward, head down. Crossing the street, she was hidden from the doorman by the barricade of the gurney's gleaming coachwork. Then she simply walked around it, past the great wood-spoked wheels and their treads of rubber, and boldly joined the group. The Frenchies were parley-vousing at each other, mustache-stroking and giggling, and did not seem to notice her, nor care. She smiled piously at no one in particular, and stood very close to a tall one who seemed drunkest. They staggered up the marble stairs, and the tall Frenchman slapped a pound note at the doorman's hand with the careless ease of a man who didn't know what real money was. The doorman blinked at it and touched his braided hat, and Sybil was safely inside. She walked with the jabbering Frenchies across a wilderness of polished marble to the hotel desk where they collected their keys from the night clerk, and scattered and staggered up the curving stairway, yawning and grinning, leaving Sybil behind at the counter. The night clerk, who spoke French, was chuckling over something he'd overheard. He sidled down the length of lintled mahogany with a smile for Sybil. "How may I be of service, madam?" The words came hard, almost stammering at first. Could you tell me, please, has a Mr. Michael, or rather, is General Sam Houston still registered here? Yes, madame, I did see General Houston earlier this evening. However, he's in our smoking room now. Perhaps you could leave a message? Smoking room? Yes, over there, behind the acanthus. The clerk nodded toward a massive door at the corner of the lobby. Our smoking room is not for the ladies, of course. Forgive me, madam, but you seem a bit distressed. If the matter is vital, perhaps I should send a page. Yes, Sybil said. That would be wonderful. The night clerk obligingly produced a sheet of cream-laid hotel stationery and proffered his gold nibbed reservoir pen. She wrote hastily, folded the note, scrawled Mr. Michael Radley on the back. The night clerk crisply rang a bell, bowed in response to her thanks, and went about his business. Shortly, a yawning and sour-faced little page appeared and placed her note on a cork-topped salver. Sybil trailed anxiously behind as she trudged to the smoking room. "It is for the General's personal secretary," she said. "'Tis all right, miss, I know him." He heaved one-handed at the smoking room door. As it opened and the page passed through, Sybil peered in. As the door slowly closed, she had a long glimpse of Houston, bareheaded, shiny-faced, and sweaty drunk, with one booted foot propped on the table beside a cut glass decanter. He had a wicked-looking jackknife in his hand and was puffing smoke and jabbing at something, or whittling. That was it, for the floor around his leather chair was littered with wood shavings. A tall, bearded Englishman murmured something to Houston, and the stranger had his left arm caught in a white silk sling and looked sad-eyed and dignified and important. Mick stood at his side, bending at the waist to light the man's cheroot. Sybil saw him rasping at a steel sparker on the end of a dangling rubber gas tube, and then the door shut. Sybil sat on a chaise lounge in the echoing marble lobby, warmth stealing through her damp, grimy shoes. Her toes began to ache. Then the page emerged with Mick on his heels, Mick smiling back into the smoking room and stretching out a cheery half salute, and Sybil rose from her seat. Seeing her there, his narrow face went bleak. He came to her quickly and took her elbow. "Bloody Christ," he muttered. "What kind of silly note was that? Can't you make sense, girl?" "What is it?" she pleaded. "Why didn't you come for me?" "Bit of a contretemps, I'm afraid. Case of the fox biting his own arse. Might be funny if it weren't so bleeding difficult, but having you here now may change matters. What's gone wrong? Who's that gentry cove with the gammy arm?" "Bloody British diplomat, as doesn't care for the General's plan to raise an army in Mexico. Never you mind him. Tomorrow he'll be in France. Tomorrow we will be in France, and he will be here in London, annoying someone else. At least I hope so. The General's queered things for us, though. Drunk as a lord, and he's pulled one of his funny little tricks. He's a nasty bastard when he drinks, truth tell. He starts to forget his friends." "Well, he's gulled you somehow," Sybil realized. "He wants to cut you loose. Is that it?" "He's nicked my Keno cards," Mick said. "But I mailed them to Paris, poste restante," Sybil said, "just as you told me to." "Not those, you goose. The Keno cards from the speech." "Your theater cards? He stole them?" "He knew I had to pack my cards, take them along with me, don't you see? So he kept a watch on me somehow, and now he's nicked them from my baggage. Says he won't need me in France after all, so long as he's got my information. He'll hire some onion eater that can run a Keno on the cheap, or so he says. But that's theft." "Borrowing, according to him. Says he'll give me back my cards as soon as he's had them copied. That way I don't lose nothing, you see?" And Sybil felt dazed. Was he teasing her? But isn't that stealing somehow? Try arguing that with Samuel Bloody Houston. He stole a whole damn country once, stole it clean, and picked it to the bones. "But you're his man. You can't let him steal from you." Mick cut her off. "When it comes to that, you might well ask how I had that fancy French program made. You might say I borrowed the General's money for it, so to speak." He showed his teeth in a grin. "Not the first time we've tried such a stunt to one another. He's a bit of a test, don't you see? Fellow has to be a night out, a right out and outer to travel with General Houston." "Oh, Lord," Sybil said, collapsing into her crinoline on the chaise. "Mick, if you but knew what I've been thinking." "Well, brace up then." He hauled her to her feet. "I need those cards, and they're in his room. You're going to find them there for me and nick 'em back, and I'm going back in there and brass it out, cool as ice." He laughed. "The old bastard mightn't have tried this if not for my tricks at his lecture. You and Corny Sims made him feel he was right and fly pulling strings, but we'll make a pigeon of him yet, you and I, together." I'm afraid, Mick, Sybil said. I don't know how to steal things. You little goose. Of course you do, Mick said. Well, will you come here with me and help me then? Of course not. He'd know then, wouldn't he? I told him you were a newspaper friend of mine. If I stay too long talking, he'll smell a rat. And so he glared at her. All right, Sybil said, defeated. Give me the key to his room. Mick grunted. Key? I haven't the bloody key. A wash of relief went through her. Well, then I'm not a cracksman, you know. Keep your voice down, else you'll tell everyone in Grants. His eyes glinted furiously. He was drunk, Sybil realized. She'd never seen Mick really drunk before, and now he was lushed, lightning struck. It didn't show in his voice or his walk, but he was crazy and bold with it. I'll get you a key. Go to that counterman and blarney him. Keep him busy. And don't look at me. He gave her half a shove. Go. Terrified, she returned to the counter. The Grand's telegraph stood at the far end, a ticking brass machine on a low marble pedestal decorated with leafy gilt vines. Within a sort of bell glass, a gilded needle swung to and fro, pointing out letters in a concentric alphabet. With every twitch of the needle, something in the marble base clanked methodically, causing another quarter inch of neatly perforated yellow paper tape to emerge from the marble base. The night clerk, who was punching binder holes in a bundle of fan-fold paper, set his work aside, clipped on a pince-nez, and came toward her. Yes, madame. I need to send a telegram. It is rather urgent. The clerk deftly assembled a small box of punch cards, a hinged brass perforator, a neatly ruled form. He took out the reservoir pen Sybil had used earlier. Yes, madame. Citizen number? Oh, would that be my number or his? Well, that would depend, madam. Are you planning to pay by national credit? May I charge it to my room? Sybil hedged. Certainly, madam. Room number? Sybil hesitated for as long as she dared. I suppose I'll pay cash, actually. Very well. Now, the addressee's citizen number, if you please. I'm afraid I don't know it, actually. And she blinked at the clerk and began to chew on one knuckle. He was very patient. You do have a name and address, though, right? Oh, yes, Sybil said hastily. Mr. Charles Egremont, MP, The Beeches, Belgravia, London. The clerk wrote this down. It is rather more costly to send a wire with only an address, madam. It's more efficient to route it direct through the Central Statistics Bureau. Sybil had not been looking for Mick. She had been afraid to look. Now, from the corner of her eye, she saw a dark form scuttle across the lobby floor. Mick was bent almost double with the shoes off, the laces knotted around his neck. He charged headlong at the waist-high mahogany counter, grabbed the forward edge two-handed, vaulted over it in a split second, and vanished. And he had made no sound at all. Something to do with the way an engine handles messages, the clerk was explaining. Indeed, Sybil said, but I haven't his citizen number. I shall have to pay the extra then, shan't I? This is very important. Yes, madam, I'm sure it is. Pray go on, and I shall take dictation. I don't suppose I should begin with my address and the date. I mean, a telegram's not a letter, really, is it? No, madam. Or his address, either? Brevity is the essence of telegraphy, madam. Mick would be creeping to the hotel's mahogany pegboard, which hung clustered with room keys. She couldn't see him, but now she imagined she could hear him moving and almost smell him, and the clerk needed only to glance to his right to discover a sneak thief creeping around him, crazy-eyed and crouching like an ape. Please take this down, Sybil quavered. Dear Charles, the clerk began scribbling. 9 years ago, you put me to the worst dishonor that a woman can know. The clerk stared in horror at his pen, a hot flush creeping up past his collar. Charles, you promised me that you would save my poor father. Instead, you corrupted me, body and soul. Today, I am leaving London in the company of powerful friends. They know very well what a traitor you were to Walter Gerard and to me. Do not attempt to find me, Charles. It would be useless. I do hope that you and Mrs. Egremont will sleep soundly tonight. And Sybil shuddered. Sign that Sybil Gerard, if you please. Yes, madam, the clerk muttered, eyes downcast, as Mick sprang silently back over the counter in his stocking feet. Mick crouched low, hidden by the counter's bulk, then crept off quickly on his haunches, waddling through the marble floor like a monstrous duck. In a moment, he had rolled behind a pair of overstuffed chairs. What do I owe? Sybil asked the clerk politely. 2 and 6, the clerk stammered, quite unable to meet her eyes. She counted it from the little clasp purse that she took from her muff and left the red-faced clerk at his station, punching telegram cards from his box. Mick came strolling like a gentleman across the lobby. He paused beside a reading rack hung with neatly ironed newspapers. He bent down, coolly retying his shoes, straightened, and she saw the glint of metal in his hand. Not bothering even to catch her eye, he tucked the key behind a cut velvet cushion on the chaise lounge. Then he stood briskly, straightened his tie, brushed at his sleeves, and strode straight off back into the smoking room. Sybil sat for a moment on the chaise, pretending to read a gold-spined monthly transactions of the Royal Society. Carefully, with the fingertips of her right hand, she fished behind her for the key, and here it was, with the number 24 engraved on the oval brass. She yawned in what she hoped was a ladylike fashion and stood to retire upstairs entirely as if she had a room there. Her feet ached. As she trudged along the silent gaslit hall toward Houston's suite, she felt a sudden amazement at having struck out at Charles Egremont. Needing some dramatic message to distract the clerk, she blurted out threats and rage. It had come boiling out of her almost without her will. It puzzled her and even frightened her after having imagined that she'd almost forgotten the man. She could imagine the fear on Egremont's face when he read her telegram. She remembered his face well enough. Fatuous and successful, which always looked as though it meant well and always apologized and always preached at her and whined and begged and wept and sinned. He was a fool. But now she let Mick Radley set her to thieving. If she were clever, she should walk out of the Grand Hotel, vanish into the depths of London, and never see Radley again. She should not let the prentice oath hold her. To break an oath was frightening, but no more vile than her other sins. Yet somehow here she was. She had let him do with her as he would. She stopped before the door, looked up and down the deserted corridor, fingered the stolen key. Why was she doing this? Because Mick was strong and she was weak? Because he knew secrets that she didn't? And for the first time it occurred to her that she might be in love with him. Perhaps she did love him in some strange way, and if that were true, it might explain matters to her in a way which was almost soothing. If she were in love, she had a right to burn her bridges, to walk on air, and to live by impulse. And if she loved Radley, it was finally something she knew, which he didn't, and her secret alone. Sybil unlocked the door nervously, but rapidly. She slipped through, shut it behind her, and set her back against it. And she stood in darkness. There was a lamp in the room somewhere. She could smell its burnt wick. In the wall opposite, the outline emerged of a square curtained window to the street. Between the curtains, a faint knife slice of upwashed gaslight. She faltered her way into the room, hands outstretched until she felt the solid polished bulk of a bureau and made out the dim sheen of a lamp chimney there. She lifted the lamp and shook it. It had oil. Now she needed a lucifer. She felt for drawers in the bureau. For some reason, they were already open. She rustled through them, stationary, useless. And someone had spilled ink in one of the drawers. She could smell it. Her fingers brushed a box of lucifers, which she recognized less by touch than by the dry, familiar rattle. Her fingers really didn't seem to be working properly. The first lucifer popped and fizzled out, refusing to light, filling the room with a vile smell of sulfur, and the second showed her the lamp. Her hands were trembling badly as she raised the chimney and applied flame to the wick. She saw her own lamplit reflection staring wild-eyed from tilted cheval glass, then doubled in beveled mirrors set into the twin doors of a wardrobe. She noticed clothing scattered on the bed and on the floor. A man was sitting on the arm of a chair, crouched there like a great shadowed crow, an enormous knife in his hand. He stood then, but slowly, with a creak of leather, like some huge wooden puppet that had lain years in the dust. He was wrapped in a long and shapeless gray coat. His nose and jaw were draped with a dark handkerchief. "Best be quiet now, missy," he said, holding up the massive blade, dark, cleaver-like steel. "Is Sam coming?" And Sybil found her voice. "Please don't kill me. Old goat still whoring, is he?" The slow Texan voice slid forth like treacle. Sybil could barely make out his words. "You his fancy gal?" "No," Sybil said, her voice strangled. "No, I'm not. I swear it. I came here to steal from him, and that's the truth." There was a ghastly silence. "Take a look round you." Sybil did so, trembling. The room had been ransacked. "Nothing here to steal," the man said. "Where is he, gal?" "Well, he's downstairs," Sybil said. "He's drunk." "But I don't know him. I swear, my man sent me here, that's all. I didn't want to do this. He made me do it." "Quiet now," he said. "I wouldn't hurt a white woman unless I had to. Put out that lamp." "Let me go," she pleaded. "I'll go straight away. I meant no harm." "Harm?" The slow voice was heavy with gallows certainty. "What harm there is, it's for Houston, and that's justice. I didn't steal the cards. I didn't touch them." "Cards?" He laughed, a dry sound at the back of his throat. "The cards don't belong to Houston. He stole them." "Houston stole plenty," the man said, but clearly he was puzzled. He was thinking about her and was not happy about it. "What do they call you?" "Sybil Jones." She took a breath. "I'm a British subject." "My," the man said, and he clicked his tongue. He masked his face. His masked face was unreadable. Sweat shone on a strip of pale, smooth skin across the top of his forehead. A hat brim had rested there, Sybil realized, to shield him from the Texian sun. He came forward now and took the lamp from her, turning down the wick. His fingers, when they brushed her hand, were dry and hard as wood. In the darkness, there was only the pounding of her heart and the Texian's terrible presence. "You must be lonely here in London," Sybil blurted, desperate to avoid another silence. "Maybe Houston's lonesome. I got a better conscience." The Texian's voice was sharp. "You ever ask if he's lonesome?" "I don't know him," she insisted. "You're here. A woman come alone to his room." "I came for the Keno cards, paper cards with holes in them. That's all, I swear." No answer. "Do you know what a kenotrope is?" "Another damn machine," the Texan said wearily. Another silence. "Don't lie to me," he said at last. "You're a whore, that's all. You ain't the first whore I ever seen." She heard him cough behind his kerchief and snort wetly. "You ain't bad looking, though," he said. "In Texas, you could marry and start all over." "I'm sure that would be wonderful," Sybil said. "Never enough white women in the country. Get you a decent man instead of some pimp." He lifted his kerchief and spat on the floor. I hate pimps, he announced tonelessly. I hate them. Like I hate Indians or Mexican Indians and French Mexican Indians with guns and 400 strong on horseback. Get them wind up rifles, closest thing to devils on earth. But the Texians aren't our heroes, Sybil said, desperately trying to remember a name from Houston's speech. I heard about Alamo. Goliad. The voice can't gone to a dry whisper. I was at Goliad. Sounds like Gilead from Handmaid's Tale. I heard about that too, Sybil said quickly. That must have been glorious. The Texan hawked, spat again. Fought him 2 days. No water. Colonel Fannin surrendered. They took us prisoner. All the niceties. Polite as you please. Next day, they marched us out of town, shot us down in cold blood, just lined us up and massacred us. Sybil said nothing. Massacred the Alamo, burned all the bodies, massacred the Meyer expedition, made 'em pick beans, little clay lottery pot, pull out a black bean and they kill you. That's Mexicans for you. Mexicans, she repeated. Comanches are worse. From somewhere off in the night came the scream of a great friction break and then a dull, distant pounding. Black beans, Goliad, her head was a babble. Beans and massacre, and this man whose skin was like leather. He stank like a navvy of horses and sweat. And down Neal Street, she'd once paid tuppence to view a diorama of some vast waste in America, a nightmare of twisted stone. The Texian looked born from such a place, and it came to her that all the wilderness of Houston's speech, all the places with such queer, improbable names, were truly real, inhabited by creatures such as this man. And Mick had said that Houston had stolen a country once, and now this one had followed an avenging angel of sorts. She fought down an insane desire to laugh. She remembered the old woman then, the vendor of rock oil in Whitechapel, and the queer look she'd given Mick when he'd questioned her. Did others work in concert with the angel of Goliad? How had so strange a figure managed to enter Grand's tonight, to enter a locked room? Where could such a man hide, even in London, even amid the tattered hordes of American refugees? Say, he's drunk? The Texian asked. Sybil started horribly. What? Houston. Oh, yes, in the smoking room. Very, very drunk. Be his last then. Is he alone? Mick was with him. He's with a tall man. I don't know him. Does he have a beard on him? His arm broke? Yeah. Yes. He made a smoking sound between his teeth, or he made a sucking sound between his teeth. Then leather creaked as he shrugged. Something rattled to Sybil's left. In the faint glow from the curtain window, she glimpsed the gleaming facets of the cut glass doorknob as it began to twist. The Texian leapt from his chair. With the palm of one hand pressed tight against her mouth, he held the great dirk before her, a hideous thing like an elongated cleaver, tapering to a point. A length of brass ran along its spine with the blade inches from her eyes. She saw notches and nicks along the brass, and then the door was opening. Mick ducking through, his head and shoulders stenciled out by the light in the corridor. She must have struck her head against the wall when the Texian flung her aside, but then she was kneeling, the crinoline bunched beneath her, watching the man hoist Mick against the wall, a single great hand about his throat, the heels of Mick's shoes beating a frantic tattoo against the wainscoting until the long blade struck again, filling the room with the hot reek of Butcher Row. So where are we? I'm actually going to leave it there. We are, we're at the 1 hour mark. So I'm going to leave it there and we will pick this up next week, next Friday. Very exciting stuff. I love this book so far. I'm so glad I pulled it off our bookshelf. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about Cory Doctorow next week when I'm a little more prepared. As I mentioned, we've just been really busy. If you are just listening for the first time, this was part 3, or this is the third Friday reading that I've done of this book called The Difference Engine. So you can go back and listen to parts 1 and 2 so you can catch up. And on Wednesdays, I try to do a little something just for the patrons and the subscribers. There we are. So if you would like to become a patron, we have in the past done years of video essays and work starting officially in, I would say, 2020, and unofficially going all the way back to like 2016, where we started sort of the concept of Book of Hours. So I don't know if this is your first time, listening to us or listening to me. So please go back to our YouTube channel and take a look at some of the things that we have already produced over the years. You might get something out of it. There will be more to come in the future, more creative work. I'm publishing, poetry for the patrons and the subscribers, the paid subscribers only. So if you want access to that, just, you can read that for like $2 a month on Patreon, or you can become a subscriber on Substack. Okay, I really appreciate you tuning in today. I am thoroughly enjoying this book so far. It is called The Difference Engine, and it's been a real delight reading it. And this is the first time I'm reading it. I've never read it before, so we're both hearing about it for the first time together. I will see you guys next Friday. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye.
You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/bookofhours. Or you can use Cash App. Thank you.